Anyway, let's start. Yesterday we talked about NumPy. We at least made a very basic introduction. Just let me begin by reminding you of that. Let me just first start by maximizing the screen. Oops, maximize the wrong screen again. It's here. Yeah. So as I said, in the beginning, you have to import the module, and this is a standard mantra which everybody uses. Uh, I talked in some detail yesterday as to why we should not use from NumPy import star. In general, why we should not use from something import star in any under any conditions anyway. But right now, the standard thing that we do is import NumPy as NP, so that after this can call everything that is there in NumPy using the keyword NP. And because I'm going to sometimes illustrate with a figure what I'm trying to say, I'm also introducing importing this pyplot submodule from matplotlib. And again, this is a very standard convention that everybody calls this PLT. So these are the two standard mantras that we are going to start with. And now we are ready to delve into what goodies NumPy has in store for us. Let me just briefly remind you that the basic thing that we have in NumPy, in fact, the reason why we are using NumPy in the first place, is this object called NumPy array. So before I go any further, let me briefly tell you what is the really different thing about the NumPy array as compared to the list which we have made before. One thing I've already seen, that in a list L that I'm creating right now, I can actually mix together various different kinds of objects. In this list, I have actually sorry, this is wrong. Yeah. So I have 4 elements in this list, and as you can easily verify, if I check the length of the list using len, which is a built-in function, it tells me the length of the list is 4. And there are 4 elements. The first one happens to be an integer, the second one happens to be a floating point number, the third one happens to be a string, and the fourth one happens to be a list. So in fact, in particular, the fourth one is basically the third element. Remember, 3th element. Remember, the counting starts as 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And L3 is this list. And we can, of course, refer its 0th element or 1th element, and so on. L31 would be the 1th element of L3. L3 happens to be the list 1, 2, 3. And L31 will be 2. In fact, L21 will also make perfect sense because L2 happens to be the string ABC, which is also an iterable which comes in pieces. So L2 square bracket 2 square bracket 1 would mean you are referring to the 1th element of L2, which is of course B, the character. Now, this kind of mixing is what makes lists very, very powerful. You can put in various different kinds of objects in lists and do many, many wonderful things with it. But all this comes at a price. The price is it is rather slow to use the Python list as it stands, for the simple reason that even if you knew where the list began, it would be very difficult to figure out where, say, the 4th element of a list is. Because each of the elements in the list have different sizes, they take up different amounts of memory. And so they are stored in a table, their locations and so on. And there has to be a table lookup every time a list element is accessed or modified and so on. On the other hand, as I said, a NumPy array may look like a list on the face of it, but it actually is very different. One major difference is all the elements in a NumPy array have to be exactly the same type. And although it's possible to have strings or other objects in a list, in a NumPy array, most of the applications that we will have, almost all of them, will assume that that the array is one of either integers or floating point numbers called floats or complexes. But each and every one of the elements will have to be exactly the same type. You can't have an integer and a floating point together. The advantage is that once the list is created, the very first time it's created, its memory locations are completely allocated, and it's very easy for the interpreter to figure out exactly where a particular element is, because each of the elements are exactly the same size, they take up exactly the same space in memory, and as a result, access to array elements and manipulations involving them become very, very fast. So this slow speed that Python is often accused of is actually because of its very permissive and dynamical nature, by which it allows you to put in various different things together, which actually makes many kinds of computation very easy and hence gives it power. At the same time, if you are only interested in doing numerical computations, that becomes a sort of liability. NumPy sort of helps you to get rid of that. NumPy allows you to produce arrays which have only one kind of element, allows you very fast access and very fast manipulation. So as we have not created an array yet in this particular lecture. Yesterday I talked about various means of creating an array. The most obvious one of which is start with what is called an array-like object, which is any object which can be converted to an array. The most common examples being lists and tuples, and you can convert that to an array by simply using the np.array command. So this was one of the first examples that we looked at. Inside the argument of the np.array, I have to give an array-like object. In this case, I'm giving a list. And say if I've given a list which is completely made out of integers, the array I'm going to get, which as we saw yesterday, as a type of ND array, although we are only dealing with one-dimensional arrays at this point, you will see n-dimensional arrays soon. And this particular ND array has various attributes that we talked about. One of them, of course, is given number of dimensions ndim, which is obviously 1. Size, which is how many elements it has. A very important attribute, the D type or data type. What kind of data is stored here? In this case, it's int32. Yours might very well differ. I'm using a 32-bit implementation on this machine. So my integer type is size 32 bits. And notice, if I wanted to know exactly how much memory this array is taking up, I can use this n bytes attribute, which the array has the moment it's created. And this n bytes attribute has a value 20. Why is it 20? Remember, a byte is of course 8 bits, and a 32-bit integer, which the data type here is, takes 4 bytes. So we have 5 integers in this array. That's the 20 bytes here. But one of the most important properties or attributes of an array is this quantity, the shape, which is a tuple, which essentially says along each dimension or axis of the array how many elements do you have. Here is just one dimensional. Because it's one dimensional, there's only one number. How many elements does the array have? But because it's a tuple, it's written with round brackets and there's a comma. It's a 5. It's not just 5. You wrote just 5 within round brackets, that would be interpreted as the number 5. To be interpreted as a tuple, you have to write this as bracket 5 comma, which is of course what NumPy has already done for us. So these are the basic attributes which every array has. Of course, arrays may have different data types and of course different sizes and different shapes. So just to illustrate that, let's first create another array, and let's just override this array A and create this array using a function that we talked about. Let's say 24. Now, of course, array, remember what arrange does is produces, it essentially behaves like range, except that it can produce floating point arrays. Also, it can take in floating point in start, stop, and increment values. So here I've given an integer value. So what is going to happen is that if by default, if I just type this, I'm going to get an array, and which will have these elements. You can notice that each one of the elements is an integer, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And of course, that is borne out by the statement. Int 32, and of course, you can easily figure out what size, what shape, etc. This array is, and I don't really have to show you all that. But just to point out that even with this command, np.arrange 24, I can actually create a floating point array by adding a few extra optional arguments. In this case, one optional argument, which is I can specify what the d type is. Specify a d type of float. I do that. Notice that the array has actually changed. This is a different array, and it takes up a lot more space in the memory, actually. Well, more space in the memory, because each one of the elements are stored now as floating point numbers 0, 1, 2, and so on. And of course, you can easily directly check that. If I just type the d type, it will tell me that this is a 64-bit floating point number. So the size of this array is exactly twice as big as the previous array. So we can use optional arguments to even change these things. For example, if I tried, just as another example, if I did this, despite the fact that all the start, stop, and end values we have given are really whole numbers, but I've given them as floating points, and that is the result. The array I'm going to get is actually a floating point array. What I can do, along with this, I can specify the d type as int. If I do that, I end up with a different array. I don't get really 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. I get 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. But I will invite you to work it out for yourself. If you are on an interpreter, it's very easy to do. That suppose I gave a range which did not really give you whole numbers with decimal points here. Okay, let's just say, suppose I gave a range of 2.1. Then of course the number should have been 0. Without the d type equal to int specifier, the array would have been 0, 2.1, 4.2, 6.3, 8.4. But because of the d type equal to int specifier, all these numbers have been converted to ints and then stored. Okay, so basically
Anando, here is a question from Anish Choudhury.
Yeah, I can't see the question. So can you just read that? Okay, let me just check.
Okay.
What is the question? Can you read it out, please?
The question is L equals square bracket 1, 2, 0, string
I can
ABC.
see that now. np.array print A, fine. I got this when this, what does this mean when here the data elements are not the same data type? Actually, you should check what happens when you try, if you do this and type, okay, let me just do it here for everybody's benefit. Suppose I want to really do this. Not very useful at this stage, but because all the advantage of numerical computation will be gone. If I did this, 1, 2 point, then it's pretty straightforward. The array that you will get is actually a floating point array. The one will be converted to 1 point. But what the question here was something like this. Suppose I had, sorry, because array takes only one argument. So notice that now it says that it's a very different data type. It's an object data type. It's a unsigned integer string data type actually. And frankly, you cannot do much calculation with it. All of them have been converted to strings of the kind unsigned 32. Not very important for us right now. You can actually also put in a list along with this. And convert it into an array. And now you get a data type of object, which essentially says that all the elements are object type and not does not really allow you to do any special calculations that way. Sometimes such arrays are actually useful, especially if you are going to do a big commercial application and you want to put various kinds of different information in the same place. But as long as you are trying to actually calculate and do mathematical objects, such mixed type arrays with, by the way, it's not really mixed type. Note that all of them really end up getting the same data type. Only the data type is not really going to be very useful for us. So we will avoid this. Okay, it can be done. There are situations where these things are useful, but they are not really standard situations for mathematical calculations, which is what NumPy really is meant for. Okay, is that enough of an answer to this question? Okay, I guess so. But let me now, this is, go back to my presentation and let me go through this. Okay, so what kind of data types can you have? It depends on your machine and on your implementation of Python. For example, there are the basic data types that you have are int, unsigned integer, boolean, float, and complex. And in that you can specify, even if your machine integer size is 32-bit, you can specify int 8 or int 16 sizes for the integers, which will take up less space in memory. If you know that your integers are small and you only want to deal with small integers, you can actually use int 8 or int 16 specifiers. What you cannot do is use higher size integers than your system allows. Similarly, floating point comes in various sizes. There's always a default size. As you saw in my machine, the floating size default size was 64. The standard 64-bit machine, it would be 128. Mine is a 64-bit machine, but the Python implementation I'm using is 32-bit. Similarly, complex would be typically double the size of float. And as I said, let me just quickly recap this. If I specify dtype int here for this particular np.array call, it's actually, well, redundant, because if I put in 1, 2, 3 as my elements, whether you given the dtype equal to int specifier or not, you are going to get 1, 2, 3, the same integer type. If you specify dtype equal to float, you're going to get 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. Well, there's a typo, it should be 3 point here. We keep dtype equal to complex. All the 3 elements, the same 3 elements, 1, 2, 3, will be converted to complex numbers. 1 point plus 0j, 2 point plus 0 point j plus 3 point plus 0 point j. Okay, what is a very important thing is this. Once you've created an array, you cannot change the array's dtype. An array, as you have seen, is mutable. You can change the array and add, subtract, multiply it by numbers. But once created, you cannot change its dtype at all. Now, that might seem like a bit of a strange thing to say, because just a while ago, I was showing you an example of an array with A with dtype int, then I wrote down an array A with dtype float, and so on. But you have to realize that what was changing was what was being stored in the variable A. The arrays were actually different arrays, not the same array. Once you have created a floating point array, every element becomes floating point. You cannot push an integer into it or a complex number into it. Say, just to show you that, let me go back to the presentation. Let's go back to a standard floating point array. So A now is an array with floating point elements. Suppose I want to change this fifth element. Well, not fifth. There's a 5th element, which in colloquial English would have been the 6th element, right? Counting starting from 0 as always. A5, of course, is 5.0. Let's say I want to change it to 15, the integer. Just check after doing the change. The changing has happened. So there's no problem with changing an array. But if I want to check the element now, notice that what has been stored is not the integer 16. What has been stored is the floating point 16.0. On the other hand, if I tried note that there is an error now because I'm trying to push in something into a floating point array, which cannot be converted into a floating point number. 5 can be converted to 5.0, but 2 plus 3j cannot be converted to a floating point number. As a result, trying to push in such an element or trying to push in, say, a string, yeah, will give rise to an error because you cannot change a string ABC to a floating point number. In fact, even if you tried this, here you will get, here notice that Python is clever enough to realize that the string that you have tried to put in can be actually converted to a floating point number. And it has done that. So if you notice now, the array has a 6th element, this one, which is now 11 point, which is basically what this string contained. So that way it's clever. You are giving it a string which can be converted to a float, it does that. But what you cannot do is you cannot make it into a string with any other kind of an array with any other kind of entry. Why is that? Simply because when the array was created, a particular amount of memory was kept aside for it, and each of the memory elements were calculated in size to be able to contain exactly one floating point number. So when you created this with 24 elements, it knew that it will have to have 24 blocks of in the memory, preferably contiguous blocks one next to each other, which will each hold exactly one floating point number. And because of that, even if you try to push in something else, if it can convert it into a float, it will be pushed in, otherwise you will get an error. Now, one interesting thing is this. First, shape of this is 24, but now you can change this by using, actually set the shape to some other value. Let's say 12,2. And before anybody asks, let me tell you that whatever I do, I have to respect the fact that I have 24 elements. So 12,2 is a shape for a two-dimensional array. Now the array A looks like one which has 12 elements along the 0th axis as you go down this, and 2 elements along the 1th axis. Well, we are usually used to matrices, so we will say 12 rows and 2 columns, a matrix-like structure. Now, the matrix language is okay for two-dimensional arrays, but the moment you go beyond 2 dimensions, the matrix language starts to break up. That, for example, can you go beyond 2 dimensions? Of course you can. For example, you can say now the array A has shape 3, 4, 2. That means, notice it has 3 elements along the 0th axis. This is one element along the 0 axis. This is another element along the 0 axis. This is another element along the 0 axis. Okay. Now it's easy to see that we have a 3-dimensional array, but you can easily check endim, and it's going to say 3. You can see you have a three-dimensional array now. And it's easy to notice that from the number of brackets we start, there are 3 brackets we start. Each element along the 0th axis is actually a two-dimensional array. This one is the first one, 0th one. This is the 1th one. This one is the 2th one. Each of those are actually 4x2 arrays, and the 1th axis would be these 4, 0, 2, 4, 6 would be the 1th axis and entry of A0 and so on. So if this is your A0 is the top piece and so on. You can actually go beyond this. I can say A dot shape is. So now I have a 4-dimensional array. And it would be a bit difficult to make out, but you can see that there is 4-dimensional. You can make out from the fact that you're beginning with 4 brackets. Each element along the 0 axis, there are 3 elements along the 0 axis. Each element is a 3-dimensional array, a 2, 2, 2 array, and you can keep on breaking this up further and further. For most of our purposes, thankfully, we are going to need 1-dimensional, not 0-dimensional, 1-dimensional and 2-dimensional arrays. And so we should be the 2 and the 3 or higher dimensional arrays are often useful, especially in modern machine learning applications. They are very, very useful actually. So it's not as if nobody uses them. They are used in a very big way, and that is precisely why NumPy's objects are n-dimensional, ND arrays, not just 1D or 2D. But for most of our applications, we will need 1D arrays and 2D arrays. So we are going to stick to basically 1D and 2D arrays in this talk. The ideas beyond that, beyond 2D, are not really much more difficult. It's just that it takes a bit more care to figure out exactly what is happening at each stage. So now, of course, I've created an array which has, an array which is 4-dimensional. I can change the array shape back to, let's say, by the way, I did not really need to put a round bracket around this, as has been stated several times earlier. If you just separate things by a comma, Python automatically packs them into tuple. So what I've really supplied on the right-hand side here is a tuple 6, 4, and now my A is 2-dimensional. There's 6 rows and 4 columns in the matrix language, and this is what it looks like. So notice that the original array was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 11. 11 because I've changed the A5 to 11. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on. And here what you're seeing are those same elements in exactly the same order, but essentially laid out in a 6x4 matrix kind of shape. What is important to keep in mind is that in all of these cases, the underlying stored elements have not changed. Changing the shape does not change the array in any way. Okay, strictly speaking, it does change the array, but it does not change the number stored in the array in any way. It does not change the memory location. So you're actually referring to the same array over and over again. Okay, same bunch of numbers over and over again, but you're writing them in different formats, and the way in which they're well, not in the memory. In the memory, they're written the same way, but because of these shape attributes changing, there are different ways of handling this, and they will be used in different ways. Okay, and now there are some other things. For example, you have reshape function. So Now, if I do A dot reshape, now what is the difference between changing A dot shape by just saying A dot shape equal to something and using the A dot reshape function? The difference really is if I use reshape, I get a different 3, 4. In this case, I get a 3, 4, 2 view of the array. But the original array's shape does not change. So the array shape is still 6, 4. Now, all these technical details will become, and why are they important, will become more and more apparent as you keep on using NumPy arrays in a big way. But let me move on because frankly, this is a huge topic. I cannot simply cover all of it in even in fact, it would take perhaps the whole workshop to talk about NumPy in itself. So I'm going to just illustrate some very nice things you can do with it, and for just to be able to use this in a big way, let me just introduce another thing which is called slicing. And slicing, of course, is something you've already met. You have met slicing in lists, and slicing in arrays are similar, but there are big differences. But before I even go to slicing, let me point out one thing. When I want to talk about this element 13 here, okay, this is actually the 1th element of the 3th row. I'm just using row and column language here. Remember, this is the 3th row, right? Because counting starts from 0, so this is really the 3th row. And if I just wrote down index that by using A3, I tried to access that, I will get this entire array 12, 13, 14, 15. So I want to access the 1th element of that. In lists, we would have done something like this. In arrays also, we can of course do this. We just did it and it worked. But the natural way of referring to the 3, 1 element of an array actually is this. Not only is this more natural, this looks more like what we use in matrices, but more importantly, this actually accesses the elements a lot faster. So the way in which you access elements in a multidimensional array is that the indices are usually separated by commas. So here you have a 2D array. You would write this as A, I, comma, J. You could have also written A square bracket I square bracket J, but that's actually not the preferred method. That's slower as well. Now, suppose I wanted a slice. So what is a slice like? Say, so this is a notation which you have seen before. You have seen this when we were discussing lists. Unabodha talked about this. This means basically you're going to take the element A1 and the element A2 and pack them, and they will come together. Okay, notice that this was the original array. So maybe it's better that you see A alongside so that you can make out. This is A1, the 1th element of the array itself. This whole thing is A2. And when you say A1 colon 3, the rule is the same as in the range function. Starts at 1, goes on in steps of 1 by default until it falls just short of the stop variable. So it will not touch 3. It will just give you A1 and A2. And that's exactly what this has done. Well, because this has multiple dimensions, this was just, if I just wrote this would be along the 0 axis. But I can actually slice along both axes. Okay. What does this mean? It means I'm going to take along the 0 axis, which means down. 0 axis means going down. So 0 axis, I'm going to take element number 1, 2, and 3. But along the 1 axis, which is this way, I'm going to take elements number 2 and whatever comes after that until the end. Remember, I've written 2 colon without an ending. It means go right up to the very end. 2, remember, is this. 2 is, these are all elements number 2. 2, 6, 10, 14, 18, right? Because 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and so on. If I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 along 0 axis and 2, 3 along the 1 axis, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, these 3 rows, but only these 2 columns. So the result is going to be just these elements 6, 7, 10, 11, 14, 15. So this is how you slice out pieces from a particular array. So now, well, I just gave you this. So there's a slice along the 0th axis, along the 1 axis. I just give a single number, which is 1. What this means is in the 0 axis or the 0th index, I'm going to take the values 1, 2, and 3. But for all of them, I'm going to take only the index 1 along the 1 axis. Index 1, of course, is this column. So this is going to give me 11, 9, and 13 in a 1D array. If it's possible, if the output comes out to be naturally in some multidimensional array, that's what the output will come out to be. If it can come out to be in a 1-dimensional array, that's exactly what you're going to get. So one thing that's going to be pretty useful for us, something like this. Suppose I wrote A1, comma, colon, or maybe A3, comma, colon, let's say. It means I'm going to set the 0th index as 3, and I'm going to take all the values of the 1 index, which essentially means this is my 3rd element along the 0th axis. I'm going to take all of them because the 1 index, axis 1 index has not been specified. I'm taking all elements along axis 1, which of course is the same as just taking A3. So frankly, this slice seems to be a bit redundant. We just remind you this is A, but what is useful is this. Suppose I just want to take the 3th column, in which case, remember there are only 4 columns here, so 3th is the last one. I want just the 3th column of this whole 2-dimensional matrix-like thing. So what I have to do is say this, take the entire slice along the 0th axis, but from the beginning till the very end. That's why you have nothing before the colon, nothing after the colon. Then you follow it by the comma. Comma just separates the indices along different dimensions. And along the 1 axis, which remember is the horizontal axis here, I'm specifying that the index is 3. So I'm going to get every one of these elements with index 3. So this is how slicing works. You get columns, you get rows separately this way. Or you can get multidimensional arrays picked out, sub-arrays picked out. Now, one word of warning, which is this. This is going to be pretty useful. Remember, with this, let's say B. So B now, of course, is this array. So let's say I change B. How do I change B? I change, say, the 0th element of B, which is, of course, 3 now, to 7, or maybe 77. Because B now is this. What may come as a surprise to you is that the same thing happens to A as well. The important thing to remember is that when you are slicing an array, you're just getting a different view or view of a part of the array. Just like when you are changing the shape of an array, you are actually changing the way it looks, but it's the same number of elements, same memory locations. When you're taking a slice, you're looking at a part of the entire set of numbers, or the entire set of zeros and ones, which made up the original array. But you're just looking at a part of it, but you're looking at the same part. You're not really copying it elsewhere. So this B which I've written down here, is not a copy of those values. It's actually those values themselves. So we change the array B, the array A also changes. This might come as a bit of a problem because sometimes you may want to change a copy without changing the other one. But that's something we also met with lists before. And the only really important warning which I have for you is this. List, this would have been a deep copy, which would mean all elements of the list A, if A had been a list, would have been copied into a different list B. And then changing B would not have changed A. But now, that's no longer true. Complete slices do not provide deep copies. No matter how you slice, they are essentially talking about the same array. Of course, you have the np.copy function. One way to produce a copy of B, B of A, another bad way, to ask me, is this. Sorry. Now, if you are going to do a calculation, A, you're adding 0 to every, when you add a single number to an array, it means the number gets added to every element of the array. Of course, you're adding 0, which means the numbers don't change. So B, of course, ends up looking exactly the same as A. And now, if you change the 0, 0 element of B back to, say, just to 0, let's say, A no longer changes because when you did a calculation involving an array, the array itself did not change. It returned a new value which was stored in the new array B. Now that it's in a new array B, you can change B very much without changing A. So if you want to quickly get a copy of all the elements of A into a new array, you can do that just by adding 0 to the old array. But this is not a very good idea because, after all, especially if you're dealing with an immense array, which you could, this could be a million by million array for all you care. And those are things which are pretty common actually in applications. This would take a huge amount of time because even adding 0 to every element takes some time. Huge, of course, is relative. But if you want to do this over and over again in a program, that might slow down your program. In this cases, the best way to actually deal with it is use this B is a true blue copy of A. Same elements right now, but if you change, but entirely different memory locations, so you can change B at your will without changing A. So basically, slicing and reshaping are the two most important things that you need to know about arrays before you can actually go ahead and apply them. So what I will do now is I will stop the presentation for a while and ask whether this is clear to everybody, because this is the critical part. Once this is clarified, I can go over and talk about some applications. So does anybody have any questions about this? There is no, okay. Debashita apparently asked, besides does that. Besides does what? Oh. Okay, does anybody have any questions, or can I move on to the applications now? Apparently nobody has any questions. Okay, good. So I've just realized one other bad thing, which is I will just stop presenting for a while because give me a few minutes because I need to download a presentation element. I've forgotten that I'm using a different machine. So In the meantime, Kishore, could you just take over for a while? 2 minutes.
Just a minute. Vishwajit Bhunia,
Mhm.
can you hear me? Vishwajit Bhunia asked a question. If I add other than 0, what is the meaning of this question? Please unmute and ask us, please.
Sir, actually, sir, Anundu sir told that B equal to A plus 0, and we see that A and B both the same. But if we add other than 0,
Okay. I understand your question. Look, I did not really say A and B are both the same. If I just said if you write A plus 0, 0 gets added to every element of A. That of course means that the numbers which are stored in B and A are the same. They are not the same array. They are actually different arrays. Okay. Because they are different arrays, after you do this, you can change B without changing A and vice versa. Am I making sense here?
okay, sir.
The same numbers, but different memory locations altogether. You can handle one without handling the other. So if you want to make a copy, suppose you want to store a copy of your array for some purpose,
Yes.
and for safekeeping, so that later on you change your original array, you want to get back your original values somehow. Doing that by saying B equal to A will not work. Because if you suppose you may want to see later on what your original B was, original A was, you just wrote B equal to A and then kept on changing A, B would also change. But you wrote B equal to A plus 0 and then kept on changing A, B would not change. So you will have a copy, safe copy of the original value. But as I also said, now A plus 0 is why A plus 0? Because you don't want to keep a copy. If you had written A plus 1, 1 would have been added to every element. This is all. If you add A plus 7.2, 7.2 would have been added to every element. That's actually very useful, as you will soon see. But as I said, despite being very useful, it also takes time because every element has to be mathematically manipulated. Well, not mathematically, but electronically in a computer, and that takes time. So np.copy A is much faster than writing B equal to A plus 0. So B equal to A plus 0 is a quick way of doing this, but not really a very efficient thing to do.
Okay, sir.
So does
Okay,
that make sense? Okay, and I think I am sort of ready with.
Shravanti Dhar asked a question.
Okay, let me get back to the. Okay, Shravanti, what was the question?
Shravanti actually asked that when you give something like A colon 4 comma 2 colon, what does it mean?
So let me just take a look.
I mean,
A
you're going
1:4. Okay.
slicing
Okay.
both over column and row.
Okay, now we were dealing with the two-dimensional. Okay, let me start the presentation again. Then okay, I hope everybody can see the message that I'm presenting to everybody. Okay, let me go back to this. A here was a two-dimensional array. Just remember that. Because it has two dimensions, it has two indices, just like a matrix has two indices, I and J. Right? A row index, a column index. I hope everybody here is more or less familiar with what a matrix is. So now when I slice it, I'm going to take a piece out of this. Okay? If you want to take a piece out of this, what kind of piece can I take? I can take a piece along the zero axis. Zero axis, remember, zero being the first axis, by the way. Zero is how you start counting. So zero axis, if you change the index along the zero axis, you go down like this. If you change the index along the one axis, you go horizontally. Okay. So when I write something like A, just 1 colon 4. I'm not saying anything about the one along dimension 1 or axis 1 at all. I'm only talking of index along axis 0. Here, if I say 1 colon 4, I will take A1, which is this entire row here, A2, the entire row here, and A3, the entire row here. So A1 colon 4 would simply be these three, an array with these three or these three rows. Okay, 3, 4 array. Well, just we usually colloquially say that this is a new array or something, but it's not a new array. This is just a piece of the old array. So A1 colon 4 is here. If I now write A1 colon 4 comma A0, just 0. So what will that mean? It means I will take indices 1, 2, and 3, not 4, but 1, 2, and 3 along axis 0. But along axis 1, I will take only index 0, which means I will take 4 because that's row 1, column 0. Is row 1 column, row 2 column 0, row 3 column 0. So just these three things together, 4, 8, and 12. Okay, and if I wrote something like 0 colon 3, so that would mean along the row axis, that's easier to speak of right now, is index 1, this one, index 2, the next one, and index 3. But along the one axis is indices 0, 1, and 2, which means actually these. Well, not the 7 and 11. I can't unfortunately mark it properly here. It's 4, 11, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. Now, of course, if I want to start at 0, I can drop that. If I don't write that, by default is 0. And similarly, if I start at 2 and don't write the ending, it means 2 from column number 2 to the end. That's it. That's what this means. I hope this is clear now. Or if not, you can of course go ahead and ask.